Popped It, Part 2 ending. There was no turning back now. The following day, Thursday, I took the most significant risk. I called in sick and drove towards the border, reaching El Paso and then crossing into Mexico. After spending about $15, I caught a flight to Mexico City and then to the Cayman Islands. There, I withdrew the money from one bank and deposited it into another. Throughout this process, I was cautious, wearing a hat and sunglasses to avoid recognition. I spent the night and returned to Mexico the next day, feeling utterly drained. I had kept $5,000 for my expenses and successfully deposited over $80,000 in the new account. I paid for everything in cash during my journey back home. The risks I was taking were immense, and the gains not proportionate, but I was driven by a deep-seated anger. Anger towards my wife for her betrayal, her unfaithful partner, and my former best friend who was involved with both of them. With the financial transfers complete and the money securely hidden, I began the next part of my plan. Using the internet cafe's VPN, I uploaded the information I had gathered to a secure location. It took a couple of hours, but eventually, my carefully planned messages began their destructive journey. I utilized an anonymous mail service in Denmark to convert these emails into physical letters, sending them out to the intended recipients. It cost a little over $100 to set up and less than $2 per letter, a small price for the impact it would have. After ensuring all traces of my involvement were eliminated, I waited. The repercussions were immediate and intense. My phone was inundated with calls from furious spouses, accusingly referring to the infidelities of their partners, which I assumed were directed at my wife. The cleaning company's website was promptly shut down, unsurprisingly. I reported my wife as missing to the police, explaining that she had supposedly gone to visit her family, and upon not hearing from her, I reached out to them only to find they were unaware of any visit. I provided the details of her car and mentioned the significant amount of money she had taken from our account. The police recorded my statement but didn't seem overly concerned, likely interpreting the situation as a voluntary departure. On Sunday morning, the police arrived with a warrant. I let them in, cooperating fully. They seized my wife's computer, which I knew would yield no useful information. I had strategically left my own laptop at work, anticipating their search. As they examined her belongings, I noted that it appeared she had taken only a few outfits and minimal cosmetics, suggesting a hasty departure. One of the officers remarked, "Looks like she left in a hurry." I responded, "I have no idea. She called me about a family emergency and was gone when I returned." The officer then asked, "How long have you been involved in this scheme of theirs?" I played the role of the oblivious husband, maintaining my cover in the unfolding drama. "Since the beginning, I've been involved in the cleaning business with her, but I only found out about the additional services recently through an email. It's not something you want to discover about your partner," I explained to the officers. They asked a few more questions, and I assured them I would contact them if I heard from her, though I suspected this wouldn't be the last of our interactions. Feeling the need for confrontation, I decided to visit my former best friend, who probably wasn't aware of his new status in my eyes. He welcomed me into his home, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil. "I can't believe the rumors about your wife and Gail. Is it true?" he asked. I played along, masking my inner contempt. "I don't know. She left days ago and hasn't contacted me since. It doesn't look promising." Alice, his new wife, joined us and offered a beer. It seemed Nick had kept her in the dark about his involvement. Despite Nick's apparent nervousness, he tried to show sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear this. I never thought Brenda or Gail would do something like this. If you need anything, just let me know." As Alice sat beside him, I decided to reveal my hand. I took out the photos I had brought and laid them out before them. "Maybe you can explain how long you've been involved with Gail, and possibly my wife too," I challenged him. The shock on Nick's face was evident. He scrambled to collect the pictures, while Alice, bewildered and worried, looked them over. "Nick," she asked, her voice filled with concern. Nick, attempting damage control, insisted, "This isn't what it seems, I swear. These are old, from before Alice and I got serious. So, these are from just after your honeymoon. You weren't serious then." I pressed. I could see the anger rising in him. "Where did you get these? They must be fake." I leaned back, casually sipping my beer. "I got an anonymous email with these photos and a log of your appointments with their VIP service. Seems you've been a regular for the last 6 months. I even have a video of one of your sessions. Interested in watching it?" I asked, watching his facade crumble. Still in denial, he turned to his wife. "It's not what you think. It was just regular cleaning. But the records show Brenda's team, including her, serviced you 3 out of 4 times. It's concerning, Nick. Why would you get involved with Brenda like this, especially while being engaged to Alice?" I questioned him. "I didn't," he stammered. I stood up, addressing Alice. "If you're interested in seeing the evidence I have, you're welcome to come by. It's quite incriminating. According to the logs, he was involved with Gail twice after a special welcome home service, right after your honeymoon. Why are you doing this?" Nick asked me, bewildered. "You betrayed me with my wife, Nick. That changes everything between us," I retorted. "It was just, everyone was doing it. I didn't think it would affect our friendship," he tried to justify. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It changes everything, Nick. The next time I see you, you'd better be ready. I won't let this go. Dave, please. He started. Just stop. Don't even talk to me, I said sharply and headed for the door. Enjoy your life, Nick. Later that night, I heard a tapping at the back door. It was Gail, looking disheveled. I need to talk to Brenda, she said urgently. Ah, the second part of the duo. What brings you here? I said coldly. She flushed with embarrassment. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were scaling back. You have to believe me, Dave. Brenda and I were stepping away from the extra services. We had hired others for that. But I have proof that says otherwise, I pointed out. She sat down, distressed. It was just a few of our original clients. We were trying to phase out that part of the business. It was only until we got things stable. I see. So, you were only part-time in your activities. How could I have missed such a detail? I replied sarcastically. Please, Dave, where is she? I need to talk to her urgently. I honestly don't know where she is. I haven't seen or heard from her since she left, I replied. Gail looked at me anxiously. You didn't have anything to do with her disappearance, did you? I wish I did, just so I could confront her about her betrayal. It's not easy getting a divorce on grounds of abandonment, I said. Gail's distress was evident. She took almost all of our shared funds. I need that money now, for legal fees. Ron kicked me out, and I don't even want to fight over the house. The police have been involved, angry spouses are constantly calling, and my family knows everything. She broke down, tears streaming down her face. I poured her a glass of wine, which she drank quickly. I refilled her glass as she continued. I don't know what to do next. Ron has cut off all the finances. I'm nearly out of money and can't even afford the gas to go home, she sobbed. We just wanted the business to succeed. We worked so hard for over 2 years, trying to save it with a last-ditch effort. Sitting next to her, I took her hand, despite my inner revulsion. Gail, you made choices. You and Brenda betrayed your partners repeatedly, for money. What did you expect would happen? She looked at me desperately. We never thought we'd get caught. It was supposed to be discreet, a business arrangement. We didn't think it would hurt anyone. There was no emotional attachment, she pleaded. I can't empathize with that. I believed my wife loved me, but she was unfaithful with numerous people, including my closest friend, I countered. Gail gripped my hand tightly. Brenda does love you. You were always supportive, and we often talked about how understanding you were. You mean everything to her. That's hard to believe, considering her actions. And now she's gone with all our money. She took your money too? She asked, surprised. A bit less than $7,000, that's what was in our joint account. I've closed her credit cards and other accounts for now, at least until I hear from her, I informed Gail. Gail seemed utterly defeated. What am I going to do, Dave? My marriage is over, I'm financially ruined, the police are investigating, and I'm unemployed. I gently removed her hands from mine and stood up, leaving the room momentarily. When I returned, I placed $500 bills in front of her. She looked at them, a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. I wish I could refuse this, but thank you, she said. Offering her my hand, I helped her stand up. Despite everything, she still had an appeal to her. Let's get some rest, I suggested, trying to provide some comfort. She hesitated, visibly tense. 2. Sleep. Yes, you need rest. We can talk more in the morning about how to deal with everything, I reassured her. Her expression shifted from relief to resignation. I'm just a burden to you now, aren't I? I led her upstairs. You're not just a burden. I'm offering you a place to stay for now. She followed me, her steps heavy with the weight of her situation. What will happen after this? She asked, her voice quivering. We'll figure it out as we go. You can stay here instead of worrying about a motel. We'll discuss how to handle things in the coming days, I said, trying to sound supportive. She nodded, a mix of gratitude and sadness in her eyes. That's more than I expected. Thank you. In the sanctuary of my home, Gail seemed to find a temporary reprieve from her troubles, a momentary escape from the chaos of her shattered world. After enjoying the moment for a while, she paused and asked, How would you like to continue? Let's stick with this for now. You're really good at it, I complimented her. She gave a small smile. I know I'm not the first choice for many, but I try my best. You're doing great. Just keep going, I encouraged her. She resumed, taking her time and being particularly attentive. Is it all right if I park my car in your garage? I didn't want to be too obvious parking outside, she said with a hint of embarrassment. We can sort that out later. Don't worry about it for now, I reassured her. She thanked me softly and continued, skillfully bringing me to the edge and then easing off, prolonging the experience. Eventually, she intensified her efforts, clearly determined. When I finally reached the climax, she handled it impressively, continuing until I was completely spent. Catching my breath, I looked down at her. You're really something, Gail. She seemed melancholic. I guess that's in the past now. I doubt things will ever be the same with Ron or anyone else. She rested her head on my leg, her body slightly trembling. It's hard to believe how everything's fallen apart. Our lives, our marriages, all because we were too proud to let the business fail, she reflected somberly. She then changed the subject. What would you like to do next? Let's just stay close for now, I suggested. She agreed, maintaining a close proximity. We both were lost in our thoughts about the repercussions of our actions. As we continued to talk, she brought up her strict policy in her previous business dealings. Ensuring safety was a priority. I always made sure to be safe. Never took any risks, not even with Nick or Jerry, she mentioned. I was curious about her mention of Jerry, who I knew to be her husband's friend. Why the exception with me? I asked. As she answered, it became clear that she had harbored feelings for me, admiring the support I had provided. I always felt something for you, especially because of how you supported our business. I regret betraying you, maybe even more than betraying my husband. Her words were filled with regret and a confession of her long-held feelings. I wish I could turn back time, walk away from it all. But the irony is, this moment, being with you, was a secret fantasy of mine. We continued to talk, her sharing her feelings of guilt and conflict. It was a strange mix of regret and fulfillment of a fantasy. As the night went on, we spent more time together, finding a kind of comfort in each other's company despite the tumultuous circumstances. Afterwards, we showered together, and she stayed in my arms, both of us contemplating the complexities of our situation. The night was a mix of emotions, from regret and guilt to unexpected fulfillment of hidden desires. How did everything start to go downhill? I asked her gently, curious about the origins of their business's descent. Snuggling closer, she spoke in a hushed tone. It was a gradual thing, really. At first, we had strict rules against any inappropriate behavior. But then we began joking about giving extra services to our VIP clients, and that sparked interest. Initially, it was just about adding a bit of excitement to the cleaning services. She placed my hand on her chest. It started so innocently, just a bit of extra skin for more money. Our crew was open to the idea for a little extra pay. It was easy money for a seemingly small compromise. As she spoke, she began to trace her hand over me, her touch light and contemplative. It escalated quickly. Soon we were offering more revealing cleaning services for higher prices. The clients started to offer bonuses for even more intimate interactions. It didn't take long before the whole thing turned into a full-fledged menu of services. And were you and Brenda part of that? I asked, already sensing the answer. Not at first, but the pressure and the offers kept mounting. I made a bad decision, agreeing to sleep with a client for a lucrative contract, she admitted. And Brenda's involvement? I prompted. Brenda got into it because of Nick. He had found out about our services and threatened to tell you unless she complied with his demands. She agreed, but at a price to avoid being taken advantage of. Nick was her first, but he wasn't the only one. I remained silent, giving her space to continue as she began to move against me. Can I continue while we? She asked, a mix of hesitation and need in her voice. I nodded, and she began to move more rhythmically, her story unfolding with each motion. We thought it was temporary, just a push to expand the business, and then we'd step back. I convinced Brenda with numbers and projections. We were supposed to get out once we were stable. She paused, her voice tinged with regret. I'm so sorry, Dave. I know you can't forgive me for this. Just please, don't be too harsh. I tried to comfort her. It's okay. Just let it all out. You need to. As she continued to rock against me, her confession continued. The story painted a picture of desperation, misguided decisions, and the unforeseen consequences that followed. It was supposed to be a temporary measure, just a few months to stabilize the business. But it took over 5 months, and we only started pulling back our involvement about a month ago. Everything seemed under control, she explained. As she spoke, I found it easy to be with her, relaxed after our earlier activities. But how could you think you wouldn't get caught? I questioned her logic. The first few times, it's terrifying. You're constantly on edge. But gradually, it becomes routine, and you stop worrying. We convinced ourselves it was just a temporary phase and that we'd return to normal soon. It was a delusion, she admitted. As she continued, she began moving with more effort, taking over for a while. Mostly, it just felt like a job. There's not much emotion involved when you're not the one choosing. None at all. I asked, skeptical. She shook her head. There were a couple I didn't mind. They were considerate, and I guess I liked them a bit. But it was strictly professional. I couldn't help but ask a more personal question. Were they well endowed? There were a few notable ones, she admitted. One was particularly large, but it wasn't enjoyable. One of my preferred clients was average-sized, but he knew how to make it work. She gave me a quick kiss, surprising me. You're just right, though. You're about 7 inches, right? It's a good size. Anything bigger would be too much. I appreciated the compliment, though I remained cautious about her sincerity. She continued to move with me for a while, then settled down on top of me, letting me guide our movements. Do you think you could ever take Brenda back? She really loves you, you know. This will devastate her. I couldn't help but bring up the betrayal. My best friend, Gail. Brenda was intimate with him in ways she never was with me. She even boasted about it. She tensed up. How do you know? I confronted him. Someone sent me photos and a video. Do you have any idea who could have exposed everything? Her expression turned contemplative, and a hint of worry crept into her eyes as she considered the possibilities. Who do you think it was? I asked. Maybe the husband of one of those women. She might have spilled the beans, or he just stumbled upon it. Brenda must have heard something. She left in a hurry. Was the help married too? Yeah, 3 of them. Another had a boyfriend she lived with. That's really messed up, Gail. She agreed silently, increasing the intensity of our embrace. Do you think you could forgive her? She asked suddenly. She didn't intend to hurt you. Nick forced her into it. 6 months of deceit. Who knows how many others. Doing things she wouldn't with me. Betraying me while I supported her completely. It's like I unwittingly pushed her into it. Now everyone knows. I'm embarrassed. I dread returning to work. No, I can't imagine taking her back. You could leave this place. Start anew. It wasn't a romantic affair. She was foolish, but her love for you is real. She always speaks so highly of you. She would try to make amends, I'm sure. I don't want to discuss it, I said sharply. Let's drop it. She looked down, disappointed. I'm sorry, Dave. I don't want to cause you more pain. Do what you need to do. The intensity between us grew, but I remained focused on my own satisfaction, ignoring her needs. She didn't object. After, she left the bed, tidied up, then returned with a warm cloth for me. She cuddled into my arms quietly. She was almost asleep when she murmured, I don't deserve this, but thank you. You've always been more noble than we deserved. I kissed her forehead, absorbed in my own turmoil. I should have felt resentment, but instead, I pitied her. Her life was in shambles. I'd offer her a temporary haven, nothing more. Yet, I held her, feeling the warmth of her skin, aware of her affection for me and my own fondness for her. She made a grave mistake, but I couldn't bring myself to be more vindictive. Exposing her, shattering her marriage, turning her into a mockery. Now Nick and my unfaithful wife. I couldn't fathom a punishment severe enough for them. Brenda remained out of sight. The police came by a couple more times without new information. On their second visit, weeks later, they mentioned they weren't actively searching for her. It seemed she had left voluntarily and didn't wish to be found. I hadn't heard from her since she stopped using our joint accounts and vanished. I guessed she might be somewhere around Orlando or Tampa. Nick's marriage quickly fell apart. Surprisingly, his newlywed wife managed to get something from the divorce, thanks to her capable lawyer. Then it became clear why she was expecting. The lawyers delayed finalizing everything until the child's birth and paternity confirmation. Meanwhile, the house was sold, and Nick was supporting 2 households. Nick worked in it as a software programmer. Why someone would target him, brutally injuring his hands and fingers, was beyond me. It seemed like a personal vendetta. It cost me a significant sum, but it felt like a justified expense. He essentially funded his own downfall. The irony wasn't lost on me. Whoever assaulted him also severely injured him. As for me, I had an alibi. I was preoccupied with Brenda's associate. Using medication to enhance my endurance, I indulged myself thoroughly. The thought of what was happening elsewhere gave me a certain thrill. Nick disappeared soon after. I kept an eye on the divorce proceedings, ready to intervene if he returned. He never did, as far as I knew. For 7 months, Gail stayed with me, and I made full use of her presence. She welcomed me home each day in her own way, accompanied me during chores, and we spent extended periods together. Evenings and weekends were filled with her attentiveness, including her reluctance in wearing certain outfits but never refusing my requests. The costs weren't insignificant. Her living expenses were minimal, but I spent a substantial amount from her funds on legal fees. She faced charges related to her profession, but lack of concrete evidence led to a deal. The incriminating photos were dismissed as consensual encounters, given their long acquaintance. Her business was defended as legitimate house cleaning services. Her lawyer was quite effective. Gail showed her gratitude by maintaining the house, cooking, and caring for me. If I ever got upset, she would address my needs and then quietly retire to the guest room without any objections. Whenever I felt down about my difficult life, she was there to comfort and soothe me. She was exactly what I needed at that time to heal from my unfaithful wife. Yes, the irony wasn't lost on me. I learned a lot from her. She was adventurous, and we experimented with playful activities. We tried out various toys and mild restraints. I would often express my affection in physical ways that she seemed to enjoy immensely. We would spend hours exploring different sensations, finding out how much pleasure she could experience. There were times when I would simply be beside her, gently touching her, and it was amazing to see her response to such simple gestures. It was a few months after her divorce was finalized, on a Saturday. We had spent the whole day caring for each other. She was in my arms, and when I kissed her, she responded warmly, as she always did when I rarely chose to do so. It's time, I whispered to her gently. Time for what? To move on. She tensed up. How much longer do I have here? What do you need to prepare? I'm not sure. I need to find a job, a place to live. Start looking. Let me know how it goes. Are you sure? Isn't what we have good? It's very good. You've been amazing. But I need to move forward. Being with you keeps bringing back memories of her. You understand, right? She nodded against my chest and kissed it lightly. I understand. I'm grateful for everything. I'll start looking on Monday. I thought that was the end for the night, but she showed her affection in her own way, and there was a sense of melancholy in it. Afterwards, I held her as she fell asleep crying. She eventually moved on. She found a small apartment to share and secured a modest job as a receptionist. She looked great, better than ever. She was in good shape when she first came to me, and she had worked hard to improve herself. It paid off in the end. Interestingly, we managed to stay friends, and for quite a while, our friendship included some additional benefits. After my divorce was finalized, I began to date again, something I hadn't tried before. I don't think it was out of loyalty to my marriage, given how I had been with Gail. I had a few exclusive relationships, but none provided what I was really looking for. I enjoyed those times, but when they ended, I found myself reconnecting with Gail. She left some of her belongings at my place and often stayed over, though the dynamic was different. She was there when I wanted her to be, but she always returned to her own place, never leaving on her own accord. Every so often, Gail would cautiously ask, "Can you forgive her yet?" "I don't think I ever will." It was too much, I would respond. We repeated this conversation many times, usually during our intimate moments, when I was most vulnerable. Gail didn't push too much, just lightly probing. I began to wonder if she was in contact with Brenda, if she knew something. I confronted her, and she denied it. "No, I don't know where she is, and I haven't heard from her." "Then why keep asking? I think you need her. If you were ready, I'd help you find her. I owe you that much. Bring back the woman who betrayed me." "You think that would help?" I retorted, feeling a surge of anger. She looked sorrowful. "I believe so. If you found the right person, I would step back. I want you to be happy, Dave. I wish it could be with me, but I understand it can't. Maybe it could be with Brenda, if you could find it in your heart to forgive her." Just the thought of her deceit was enough to aggravate me. "It's not going to happen, Gail. What she did was unforgivable. They say time heals all wounds. In my case, it might have eased the pain, but it left deep scars. 4 years passed before I truly moved on. My business was thriving, my anger had lessened, and I had experienced more than my share of physical pleasure. But I needed something more substantial. I met her unexpectedly at an Arby's. She bumped into me, spilling her tray. She was already having a rough day and just broke down crying right there. I've always had a soft spot for someone in distress. I helped her settle down, returned her tray and receipt to the counter, and they kindly replaced her order at no charge. I brought it back to her and gave her some space. She barely managed to thank me through her tears. It seems she lived in the area, as I encountered her several more times, including twice at the supermarket. We eventually shared a laugh about our frequent run-ins and I invited her for a coffee. A week later, we bumped into each other again. I had figured out her shopping schedule and accidentally met her at the store. Her smile brightened my day. She accepted my invitation for lunch, and I left with her phone number. The next day, I asked her out. The world is surprisingly small. She was 28, divorced, and had no children. 4 years earlier, she was newly married when she discovered her husband, who worked from home, had been using a certain cleaning service weekly. I shared the story of my wife's involvement in that company. She abruptly left our meal, clearly upset. For 4 weeks, I didn't see her, despite frequent visits to the market. I called her several times initially, then gradually less, understanding the hint. Gail was there to comfort me during this time, always supportive. I started shopping late to avoid running into her. But one evening, she approached me. "I'm sorry, it was just too painful." "I understand," I replied. "I didn't want to cause you more distress, so I thought it was best to give you space." "Did you know your phone number is blocked?" she inquired. "Yes, I still receive some unwanted calls. It's unlisted for that reason. I tried to call you. I've been in this supermarket for hours, hoping to see you. I was worried you'd changed your shopping habits." 2 weeks later, she stayed over at my place. The following week, I decided to part ways with Gail. If I'd known it would be our last time together, I might have made it more memorable. Jenny and I spent a weekend mostly indoors, sharing our life stories. She struggled to understand my relationship with Gail. "How could you care for one woman who betrayed her partner, yet leave your wife for doing the same?" she asked, somewhat frustrated. "I've asked myself the same question," I admitted. "I suppose the difference is Gail didn't betray me. She was there for me during a rough patch, feeling guilty and doing everything she could to support me. It helped, and when it was time for me to move on, she accepted it without any resistance." She looked at me incredulously. "I can't believe it, Dave. Out of everyone, I fall for the one guy who's more emotionally tangled than me." I laughed, drawing her close. "So, you've fallen for me. Obviously. Sometimes you're not the sharpest tool in the shed." Jenny was a positive influence in my life. We complemented each other well. It wasn't an intense, all-consuming love, but it was enough to lead us to commit to each other within a year. She was very attractive and a great companion at social events. In our private life, she was generous and very affectionate, which I appreciated. She was fiercely loyal, fending off any advances from others and making it clear that she was with me. My love for her grew, especially when she gave birth to our child. I knew she loved me more than I loved her, but I was content. Our intimacy might not have been as passionate as with Gail, but it was fulfilling, sometimes even exceptional. While I didn't obsess over her like I did with Brenda, I cared for her deeply and loved seeing her happy with small surprises or a night out. She was caring, beautiful, loyal, and an excellent mother. Interestingly, she became friends with Gail, my former lover and a participant in her marriage downfall. I never understood how they met. Perhaps Gail was keeping tabs on me. They seemed to have little in common, yet they grew close, with Gail frequently visiting. It was surprisingly not awkward. When Jenny was 8 months pregnant with our second child and on bed rest, Gail came over to help. She still had her knack for cleaning, though the special outfits were a thing of the past, which I admit I missed. We were relaxing in the living room one evening, with my daughter Rebecca already asleep. "Is it enough?" Gail asked suddenly. "What do you mean? Your life with Jenny. Are you happy? Is it enough?" "I am happy. She's a wonderful partner, a great mother to our daughter, and soon we'll have a son. Can you forgive Brenda now?" She prodded. "Why does it matter? She's not a part of my life anymore. I barely think of her. I've known you for years, Dave. I think you settled for less than you wanted." Her words irked me. "I have a loving, faithful wife. That's what matters." She nodded with a hint of sadness. "You're right. She adores you. She'd do anything to avoid hurting you. But why bring this up now? I just needed to know. I always hoped for more than just contentment for you. You deserve it." "Gail, I am content. More than I've been in years. I'm happy for you, Dave. Truly, it's been quite a journey these past 7 years." She held my hand gently. "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me. You had every right to turn your back on me, to treat me harshly like the others. But she was the one who left," I reminded her. "It's all right. We both know we deserved it. Don't second-guess yourself. What happened was tough, but we brought it on ourselves." It dawned on me then. She knew it was my doing. Gail, I was deeply hurt by her actions. To be betrayed like that, hearing her call me another man's name, finding out about things she never shared with me. It still pains me. I know, and so does she. She'll never reach out, but she longs to hear from you again. Maybe if you could forgive her, it would help her move on. How long have you known? About 4 years. I needed to understand why she left. It was harsh, Dave. Harsh. And what she did wasn't. What happened was a mistake. She didn't mean to hurt you. You know that. She knew what she was doing. How can you say it was unintentional? What she did was wrong, no doubt. But she never intended to cause you pain. She's regretted it ever since. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? Every time I think of her, I'm back in that moment. The hurt is still fresh. I don't know if I can ever let that go." She sighed. "I understand. I just thought it might be healing for you. And for her, even if she might not deserve it. I owe you so much, and I feel guilty. Could you consider forgiving her, if not for her, then for me?" "I can't, not right now." She rested her head against my shoulder. "Okay, I won't bring it up again. Sorry for stirring up old memories." After a moment of silence, she added, "I've started seeing someone." That caught me off guard. I hadn't heard of her dating anyone since everything fell apart. "Do you like him?" "Yes, I do. He's not you, but he's kind, caring, and he really seems to care for me." "I'm not that special, Gail." Looking up at me, her eyes were brimming with tears. "But you are. In many ways, you're still the best. Even after everything that happened with your business. With us. Yes, we brought that upon ourselves. I'll always have a place for you in my heart, but I need to focus on my own path now. I can see that you love your wife, and that's wonderful. I hope you stay happy with your beautiful family. I wish you all the best with Jeff. His name is Jeffrey Davidson III. He's quite proud of that third. I really hope it works out. Can we stay friends? I'd like that." She stood up and gave me a kiss, a farewell gesture more than anything. It was clear that we both had moved on. I got into bed next to my wife, her belly showing our soon-to-be-born child. She didn't question my tears, she simply turned to hold me. I wasn't sure how I felt, but I was grateful to have her there, her presence a comforting anchor. Then, out of the blue, I received an unexpected call at work. "Hello, Dave," the familiar voice said. I instantly recognized it. Despite 5 years married to someone else and nearly a decade since I'd last heard it, her voice was unmistakable. "Hello, Brenda. Can you visit me? Please. Now, after all this time." "Yes, please. I know I shouldn't ask, and you don't owe me anything, but I need to see you. To talk to you, just once, face to face. What do you hope to achieve with this? What could you possibly say now? Nothing that can change the past. I ruined the best thing in my life, and it's my own fault. I had hoped you might forgive me one day, maybe even that we could be together again. But we both know that's not possible. Then why ask? I need this. I'm asking you, Dave. What happened hurt me deeply, maybe I deserved it, but it was devastating. If there's even a little bit of compassion left in you for me, please give me this chance. Just once. I promise, after this, I won't bother you again." I couldn't help it. I agreed. I couldn't bring myself to tell Jenny. I should have, but I just couldn't. I told her it was a business trip. I didn't travel much for work, but it wasn't out of the ordinary. The drive wasn't too long, just 7 hours. She had moved out of Florida, just one state over. I checked into a hotel on the outskirts of town, called home, and tried to sleep, but it was restless. The next morning, I had breakfast slowly, gathering my courage. When I arrived at her address, my heart was racing. The apartment building looked run down. I pressed the buzzer to be let in, and heard her voice through the intercom. "Come up, Dave. 2B. The door's open." The door buzzed and I ascended the stairs as if walking towards a daunting fate. I knocked, then slowly opened the door to her apartment. The place was small but meticulously kept, almost like a shrine to our past life together. Photos of us and of my current family were displayed everywhere. It was overwhelming, a stark reminder of what could have been and the pain it caused. I stood there, shaking, as all the memories flooded back. "I'm in the back," her voice called out from another room. I found her in the bedroom, a shadow of the person she once was. The thought that she might expect intimacy was absurd. My anger flared, giving me a surge of determination as I approached. There she was, a frail figure in the bed, her appearance drastically altered, thin, with eyes sunken and cheeks hollow. Her hair, once lively, now looked lifeless. "Hi Dave, I can't get up to greet you," she said weakly. The sound of her voice, so familiar yet coming from someone who looked so different, was jarring. "Hi Brenda, it's been a long time." She managed a smile, and for a moment, I saw a spark of the person I once knew. She gestured for me to sit beside her on the bed, and I did, still trying to process the sight of her. "The photos?" I asked, trying to find words. "Gail helped me with them. I had a few, but she sent me the rest. She keeps me updated. I hope that's okay." I shook my head slightly. "That's not the best idea." She laughed, a pained sound. "That's the least of my worries, Dave." She reached out, her hand trembling as it touched mine. I noticed the wedding rings I had given her, now held on by tape to fit her thin finger. "Why did you ask me to come?" "I needed to see you. First, to apologize. I have no excuses. What I did was unforgivable, and it's haunted me every day. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. It's been a decade, Brenda. You shattered what we had, but I've moved on. I know, but I needed to say sorry. You never really heard it from me. You did say it when you left. That's true. But back then, I was too caught up in my own pain. That apology was as much for me as it was for you. Now, I truly mean it. I am sorry." She gently squeezed my hand. "Firstly, I need to tell you that I've forgiven you. It took me a while. You hurt me deeply, and I was so angry. You closed the door on us before we even had a chance. Perhaps I didn't deserve it, but I longed for it, desperately needed it, yet you wouldn't give it to me. Knowing you welcomed Gail, even though her mistakes were as grave as mine, if not more, really upset me. But now, I understand. It's been almost 2 years, and I've reached a place of forgiveness. I never sought your forgiveness. I know, but I forgave you regardless. I regret my actions, and I also forgive you for what happened between us. So now you want my forgiveness in return." "Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking for. For your peace, if not for mine. Can you forgive me for my foolishness, my self-centeredness, for not considering us in my desperate bid to prove myself professionally? I made grave mistakes, but I'm still asking for your forgiveness. Why did you do those things with him, things you never did with me? Why belittle me? How did I earn that treatment? You didn't. You were nothing but a supportive, loving husband. A wonderful partner." Her composed facade was beginning to falter, and her voice trembled. "It was just a role, Dave. Most times, I didn't enjoy it. I would imagine it was you. The things I said, they were just words. A way to please them, to finish things quickly. I realize how foolish that was. You seemed to enjoy it with him, denied me what you gave him. I pretended, always. He was part of what they paid for, and I played along. I assure you, before everything I hold sacred, I never once enjoyed it, especially not with Nick. I despised him for how he treated me. I'm sorry you had to live with a different belief for so long, without me explaining the truth. You're saying you faked everything. Am I really expected to believe that?" She nodded, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "I have no reason to lie, not anymore. The truth is, I was unfaithful, deceitful. I was a terrible partner. But I'm pleading with you to believe that I never found joy in any of it. But why did you do it then? Why go to such lengths when you never did with me? It was for the money, nothing more. They paid well. I convinced myself I was a successful businesswoman, doing whatever it took to succeed. I regret that deeply, and the truth is, I don't like it. I'll never understand those who do. It's painful for me, and I find no joy in it. Yet, in my regret, I'd offer it to you now, but I know you wouldn't accept it. You're not one to betray trust. In our marriage, that was only my doing. All I can do is plead for your forgiveness. Please, I don't deserve it, but I'm imploring you, Dave. Please forgive me." Tears streamed down her face, and seeing her there, her life as shattered as her spirit, I couldn't withhold forgiveness any longer. "I forgive you, Brenda." She shook her head. "Not just the words. I need more than words, Dave. I need you to truly forgive me. Forgive the one who betrayed you, broke your heart, and disrupted your dreams, who denied you the family you longed for and deserved, for ruining the best thing in our lives. I've made terrible mistakes, and it's so unfair, but I need your forgiveness." She leaned in, gripping my arm, trembling and crying, her tears dampening my skin. Gently, I helped her back onto the bed and wiped away her tears. I lay beside her, holding her close. Her sorrow was heart-wrenching. I realized then the extent of her pain, much of it caused by me, albeit unintentionally. In my response to her betrayal, I had inadvertently hurt her deeply. I whispered to her, "I'm sorry for the pain I caused, baby, and I forgive you. Everything. It's over, Brenda. My love for you was profound, and it pained me deeply, but you will always be my first true love, and I forgive you. I know you never intended to hurt me. She didn't resist. She clung to me until her tears subsided and her trembling ceased. I looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had captured my heart years ago. Gently, I kissed her, feeling her respond. There was no passion, but there remained love and forgiveness. Lying beside her, I looked into her soul through her eyes, open and pleading. I forgave her. "Thank you," she whispered softly. "You're welcome. I'm sorry it took so long." She shook her head slightly. "No more apologies. Just one last thing I need to ask. It might be hard, or maybe it'll be the simplest thing. I'm not sure." "Go ahead, ask." "Do you remember the promise? On that terrible day, when I saw the pain in your eyes that I had caused, you made me a promise. I need you to honor it now." I was confused at first, then she took my hands and brought them to her neck. I tried to pull away, but she was insistent, guiding my hands back. "I don't have much time left. Maybe a few days, perhaps weeks. I know it's selfish, but I want you, the love I had, to be my last vision. Let me imagine, just for a moment, that the past decade didn't happen. You said you'd always love me. I could see it in your eyes, even through the pain. It's faded now. I've lost that love. Let me leave this world believing you still hold a little love for me, like I should have done years ago, back when the love was still alive, even though it was hurt. Please, Dave, fulfill your promise." I whispered, gently placing my finger on her lips. "You know how much I love you, Brenda. I've loved you since the day we met, and I always will." I let my hands rest gently on her neck, my lips softly touching hers. "I'll keep my promise. That's how much I loved you, and still do." Her eyes sparkled, reminiscent of our younger, more naive days of love. She didn't resist. A faint smile appeared on her lips, her gaze locked on mine as the light in her eyes slowly faded. Her lips formed a silent "I love you. I'll always love you," I murmured. I tenderly kissed her now still lips and closed her eyelids. I released her dark hair, spreading it out like I used to love. I couldn't bear the thought of her being found unclothed, so I found her nicest undergarments and dressed her. After covering her with a sheet, I ensured she was respectfully laid to rest. She was once the raven-haired beauty who had pledged to love me until death. She had fulfilled that part of our vow. My love had waned, but there was enough left to honor that one sorrowful promise. The drive home was long. I yearned for the comfort of my wife, my children. I hoped Jenny would understand if I needed to cry myself to sleep in her arms again, something I hadn't done in nearly 3 years. We forgive each other, but at what cost? My comment. The dust in the air got in my eyes again as I read the ending. What is interesting in the story is how they move through the various stages of betrayal, anger, and grief. Their reconciliation at the end is short, and what I felt was real.